This after a bomb threat. And that passenger is now sharing what the experience was like. Here's Tim Pham from our sister station, KREM 2 News.
5:30 tonight, according to Spokane police. Meanwhile, Spokane police did arrive earlier than that with a bomb squad due to the fact that it was called here for a bomb threat.
Stevens Anchorage International Airport is one of the busiest airports in the U.S., where cargo flights hum along and passengers check in for flights. Everything seems normal until suddenly the entire airport comes to a standstill. What could have happened to shut down such a significant hub in U.S. aviation? Let's get into what made this incident so significant. It started with what seemed like a minor, perhaps even routine disturbance. Security cameras picked up an unidentified individual loitering near one of the airport's restricted access points. In most public places, someone just standing there might not set off any alarms, but airports have strict security rules for a reason. Things got worse when this person started moving toward a zone that was only used by ground support staff. This wasn't just a staff area, it was a very restricted area of the airport that needed special permission to get into. Almost right away, security teams were called, and they started to respond. What looked like a misunderstanding or small breach at first turned out to be something much worse. Within minutes, the normal buzz of activity at the airport changed as more staff were called to help protect the area. When security arrived, they saw that the person wasn't just wandering around. They were messing with equipment next to an airplane hangar. The response went into overdrive when this was found. It began as a security check but turned into a real emergency. It became much more dangerous because messing with equipment in a busy international airport is a very bad thing to do. You could be sabotaging something, or there was a bigger plan going on and you had to figure it out right away. When Craig Gamble, the director of the airport, was told, it became clear that the only thing that could be done was to close the airport for good. You can picture how fast things changed. People were stopped in their tracks, announcements could be heard throughout the terminals, and things became tense. The security teams moved quickly and decisively to make sure the area was safe and that the person was caught. The airport staff had to make a big choice at this point. Because of the unknown person messing with equipment and the possible danger it posed, everyone at the airport had to be safe first. Putting the airport on full lockdown wasn't an easy choice. This meant that all flights, both coming and going, had to stop, and the terminals had to be locked down. People were led to safe areas by security staff who moved quickly to make sure that everyone was found. Everyone who works at the airport had to work together very hard to make sure everything went smoothly. This included security officers and emergency response teams. Flights were affected right away by the decision to close Anchorage Airport. Planes that were supposed to land in Anchorage were told all of a sudden they had to go to Fairbanks, Seattle, or even Vancouver instead. Passengers on those flights had no idea what was going on, only that their plans were changing fast. Things were different inside the airport. People who were waiting to board flights or who were already at the gates were suddenly stuck because it wasn't clear when things would return to normal. Not many details were given out at first to keep people from getting too worried. The faces of airport workers and security guards showed how important it was, which made things even more tense. The pilots and crew were also in a tough spot because they had to keep the passengers calm even though they didn't know much themselves. Anchorage Airport is famous for more than just passenger flights. It's also a major hub for cargo that links North America to Asia and other places. Because of this, when the airport was closed, it had a big effect on how cargo was moved. It was a logistical nightmare because cargo flights that were supposed to land had to be sent to other airports instead. Passengers and cargo carriers were affected right away, but the effects on society as a whole were even more important. Within Anchorage, businesses that depend on the airport's operations for income felt the effects right away. Every business, from logistics companies to fish exporters, was really in danger because of the shutdown. But Alaska wasn't the only place that was affected. The airport is an important part of global transportation, especially for routes that go from North America to Asia. In other words, businesses and industries thousands of miles away also felt the effects. As soon as Anchorage Airport was locked down, it was clear that this was a problem that affected more than just the area. The fact that federal agencies like the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security were involved made the situation even more serious. The response took on a new level of urgency and coordination when they showed up. These groups are not called in for any incident. Their job meant that there might be a bigger threat or that they needed to be sure there were no other risks. This is not the first time something like this has happened, though. There have been many events in the past that were similar to the recent closure at Anchorage Airport. The accident with Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 in January 2024 was one of the most recent ones. A normal flight leaving from Portland International Airport all of a sudden turns into something out of an action movie. 6 minutes after takeoff, a door plug on the side of the emergency exit came loose, letting air out of the plane quickly and without control. One passenger said that the force was so strong that it tore off their teenage son's shirt, and she had to hold on to him to keep him safe. It scares me to think about how quickly things can go wrong on a flight. The pilots quickly dropped the plane to a safer level of altitude and flew back to Portland to make an emergency landing. Even though only a few people were hurt, the whole thing showed how important it is for airlines to have great safety protocols and quick-thinking crews. A month after the Flight 1282 scare, there was another threat of a bomb on an Alaska Airlines flight from Atlanta to Seattle. Things were very different this time, but they were still very scary. Brandon Scott, a passenger, gave a flight attendant a note saying that he had a bomb and a detonator in his carry-on.
The Spokane airport are back on schedule after a bomb threat yesterday evening. An Alaska flight scheduled from Atlanta to Seattle was forced to land when the airline says a man wrote a note that there was a bomb on board.
He made clear and scary demands: move the plane to a different airport or he'll set off the bomb. You can imagine how tense it was on board as the flight crew had to follow emergency procedures while keeping everyone calm and not telling them what the threat was.
And I'm Aaron Luna. Scott says he made up the threat because members of a cartel were waiting for him in Seattle, and this was his plan to change the plane's destination.
Authorities were ready to take action in Spokane, Washington, where the plane was sent instead. When the plane touched down, Scott was arrested, and a bomb squad checked it out but found no bombs. Scott made the threat because he thought a drug cartel was after him in Seattle, which turned out to be true. Going back to 2018 and 2019, we have the terrible accidents involving the Boeing 737 MAX planes, the Lion Air Flight 610 crash in October 2018, and the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crash in March 2019. Each killed 346 people. These events didn't just affect airports. They had a huge effect on the whole aviation industry, which includes airports all over the world.
An NBC News exclusive with the CEO of Alaska Airlines blasting Boeing over the 737 MAX 9 door plug blowout.
The problem was caused by a bug in the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, MCS, a piece of software that is supposed to keep the plane stable. These crashes were wake-up calls that showed how one mistake in technology could have terrible results. Grounding the 737 MAX planes for almost 2 years changed flight times, passengers' trust, and even the way many airports ran their businesses while these planes weren't on the runways. In December 2018, drones were seen near the runways at London's Heathrow and Gatwick airports, which caused problems that seemed almost unbelievable at the time. It might not seem like a big deal, but drones can be dangerous if they fly too close to an airplane as it takes off or lands. In both cases, flights had to be canceled or delayed, which affected tens of thousands of people during one of the busiest travel times of the year. The response came right away and was strong. There were no flights, and a huge search was done to find the people who were flying the drones. People were stuck because they didn't know when they could fly, and airlines had to rush to change their plans. The events made people aware of how open airports are to new types of security threats. Because of this, airports and government agencies had to think about ways to stop drones and make it illegal to fly them near airports. It's also important to talk about the shooting at Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, in 2013. A gunman went after a TSA checkpoint at Terminal 3 on November 1st, 2013, opened fire, and chaos broke out. Sadly, a TSA officer was killed, and other officers were hurt. As police confronted and subdued the shooter, passengers ran for cover and the terminal was cleared out. Because of the shooting, parts of the airport had to be closed for a while, which caused flights to be delayed and sent to different airports. Last but not least, let's talk about what happened at Los Angeles International Airport in August 2019.
Some holiday travelers got the scare of their lives last night at Los Angeles International Airport. A series of events led passengers to hit the floor as armed police stormed the terminals. It brought back memories of the fatal shooting of a TSA officer at the airport 3 weeks ago.
A false report of an active shooter made people scared. and the airport was temporarily locked down. As security teams looked for signs of a shooter, passengers and staff had to leave the airport and flights were delayed. It was a false alarm, which was lucky, but the damage was already done. There were a lot of delays and confusion because of what happened. There were alarms going off and people running through terminals, leaving their things behind. It was a very chaotic scene. Even though no one was hurt, the event made people think about how airports handle emergencies and talk to the public when there might be a threat. Because of all of these problems, airports have spent a lot of money on security technology over the years. It is now more common to use biometric scanners, facial recognition systems, and monitoring tools that are powered by artificial intelligence. These technologies help security teams spot odd behavior and take action before things get worse. By looking at video feeds from security cameras, for example, AI systems can now report strange behavior in real time. This kind of technology wasn't used as much 10 years ago, but now many international airports use it all the time. A big part of airport security now also includes high-tech screening tools that can find possible threats without having to open bags or do intrusive searches. One thing we've learned from past events is how important it is to be ready. Airports often hold emergency drills that act out a range of situations, from bomb threats to active shooter situations. These drills make sure that everyone, from flight attendants to security guards, knows what to do in an emergency. Things like the incident in Anchorage and others have made people around the world work together more. The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, and the aviation authorities of each country work together to make rules and share data. This cooperation helps find dangers and use the best methods, which makes it harder for people who want to attack to take advantage of system flaws. The airline business has come to understand that no airport works alone. Something that happens in one country can teach other countries important lessons. For example, after the bombing at Brussels Airport, many countries quickly put in place new screening technologies and stepped up their patrols. One thing that isn't thought about enough is how these events affect passenger confidence. It's already stressful to travel without having to worry about safety, so incidents can make people even more afraid to fly. Airports have had to come up with ways to reassure travelers that safety measures are always getting better. This includes clear communication, security measures that can be seen, and quick responses to possible threats. Building trust with the public is an ongoing process that requires both airports and airlines to be open and dedicated. If you found this video interesting, make sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future videos on major events, interesting stories, and the latest updates from around the world.